Okay, so I'm making this video about force the vote. It's supposed to be an educational video because, like, what the heck is force the vote? So, force the vote was January 2021. Uh, After the general election, Democrats take control of the House. They're voting for Speaker of the House. And in order for Nancy Pelosi to win the seat of Speaker of the House, the margins are so slim that the progressives are needed to vote in Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. So the very progressive people were saying, hey, you don't get very many opportunities to leverage your political weight and fight for the things that we put you into office to fight for. So you should leverage your vote. Say, hey, I'm not going to vote for you, Nancy, unless you have a floor vote for Medicare for all. Uh, so the secondary background level of all of this is that the plan was to force the vote on Medicare for all, knowing that it was likely going to fail. And the whole political strategy behind that is, during a pandemic, a lot of people were losing their jobs. A lot of people's healthcare was tied, or health insurance was tied to their jobs during, a health crisis. So it just kind of was a bad look on the system, being one of the only countries that doesn't have a single payer system. So it's kind of a like wake up call, saying, hey, let's do this. Uh, and, because there are enough people who would not be in supportive of that, that are elected politicians, it would fail. The idea is that in it failing, there would be, a number of Democrats that would not vote for Medicare for all, despite it being a pandemic and, the necessity of that. And, the overwhelming majority for Medicare for all and a single payer system among Democrats. And I think just all people, I think I've seen polls on that. Um, so, you have the Democrats that vote against Medicare for all. Then you circle back, and in their upcoming elections, you would then, insert progressive candidates to primary them, uh, because you'd be able to, run ads and say, hey, this person during the pandemic didn't want Medicare for all, uh, which every other country has and is benefiting from during the pandemic. So that is what forced the vote was. As you can see, it's like kind of there's a lot going on there. So I can understand people not understanding everything that was at play. So what ended up happening with force the vote? So what ended up happening was that the progressive politicians did not end up leveraging their, vote for Nancy Pelosi for the floor vote for Medicare for all. And some of the things that came out for why they didn't fight for Medicare for all was that, they were going to fight for something that they thought was more winnable. Let's not fight on something that we know we're not going to win. Let's fight for something that we might be able to win. Fair, I'd say. Uh, I mean, like, if you look at it like that, like, that's not a bad point. Like, like, hey, if we only get a couple cracks at it, this, you know, let's have our cracks be something that results in something instead of it just being, oh, now we can go primary people and maybe that'll work. Kind of get that, but also you didn't then leverage anything else. It's not like you said, okay, well, we're not going to leverage for that, so let's leverage for $15 now. So that was, whatever. So yeah, you didn't leverage for Medicare for all. You opted for the fight for $15 minimum wage. You lost that, and now the kind of what is being said is that, oh, no, 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 what we actually are gonna get is this partisan human infrastructure bill. And that's, it is what it is, I guess. We'll see what it is. They wanted 3.5 trillion for it, and we'll see how much that gets eliminated down to. Uh, Depending on what it ends up being at the end product, it could be positive, but again, it's not going to be enough for what people are wanting. I can sense that. So So why are people upset about forced to vote? So people are upset about forced to vote because they feel like they've given their time, their money, their time, their money, their energy, their vote, and their hope to people to fight on their behalf on these issues. And the people feel like the candidates they support aren't fighting hard enough, or that they're not fighting in the right ways with the limited number of opportunities that they sense that are going to be opportunities to fight for this stuff. People are also upset because all the while progressives are not fighting in this way. We all the people in the news, it would be Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, and they're essentially fighting in similar ways to how we would expect the progressive candidates to fight, but they're doing it from the ultra establishment position, and then they get kind of hailed in the media. So it's kind of frustrating from that perspective, and I'm sure it's frustrating for the candidates too that are progressive. People are upset because it's Medicare for all during a pandemic. It's pretty, not a good look in one of the only countries that doesn't have a single payer system. And people are also upset because the Force the Vote website says that 72% of Americans want Medicare for all, and every other major country on earth guarantees healthcare to all people as a right. So from a perspective of, hey, we have an overwhelming majority of people that want a single payer system, and yet we don't have any discussions about that. It's kind of laughed out of the room. That's frustrating to people. And you think it'd be frustrating to the 74% of Americans. It'd be like, hey, Medicare for all, we're gonna do that, but it's kind of quiet, it seems. So when people get upset, they aren't sensing that things are changing. They get upset, and then they question why things aren't changing. And then I think the things that people kind of go to with this are they start calling them corrupt. And in the way that corrupt is supposed to be, or I know corrupt in terms of politics would be money in politics. So when none of the candidates take big corporate money, I've now seen people being called corrupt because they get pensions after 5 years of being in Congress. And so the argument is that they're just placating the people until they are in there for 5 years so that they can get a pension. So I think that's dangerous, just to start calling them corrupt. And then people are like, well, what are they corrupt for? And we don't even have a majority of Americans that are probably like really aware of how much the money in politics is a problem. um People, they're questioning, why are they not doing anything? They think that the politicians are not doing anything because they're just talking about these issues from the correct position for their ego. And when the people are showing up at events, uh you know March for Medicare for all, it's people attack it and say, well, because you're not fighting in the way that I want you to fight. I question why you're even here, and I'm gonna now declare that you're not even here under good pretenses. You're just here for a photo op. I think that's just shitty, man. Like when you have people who are lucky enough to be in office, again, I don't like, they might not be fighting in the correct way, but to just go such a bad, just Yikes. Uh, yeah. I'm not even gonna get into that. There was a thing about Cori Bush. She was sleeping on the steps of the Capitol trying to, extend the eviction moratorium. And I guess at one point during her, sleeping out on the steps, she like went to her car or went somewhere to go get changed or take a shower. And I saw a video of someone criticizing her for doing that. Um, and they won. So yeah. And so then what are the results of all of these questioning of the people? And they're angry about the people not fighting hard enough. They question why they're not fighting hard enough, farting hard enough. They have these kind of conspiracy theory suspicions about why they're not fighting hard enough. And then what results in this, I think, is people, being like, fuck this. I'm not going to be participating in the Democratic Party either. I'm going to vote third party. I think it gets people to be like, wow, I had hope in this person, and now I don't think that they're fighting hard enough or in the right way. So now I just don't care about politics. So people become apolitical. And I think also from all of the infighting that occurs and how toxic it is and how much of a purity tests, it's like a double down purity test because it's like we agree 100% on the policies with these people, but then we also have to agree 100% on the strategy. And it'd be nice, I guess, if we all believed on the same strategy, but that's not the thing I really care about. I mean, I just care that we're at least all on the same page first. And I don't think there's enough of us that are all collectively on the same page about this kind of stuff to be at each other's throats about, inexperienced fuck ups. So I just think it's a bad look. If I was an apolitical neutral person, and I kind of started to lean into the left wing verse, and I kind of saw how toxic it was. I don't know if that would be something that I'd be interested in. Um, Also, let's get into the difference between the two systems, the current system and the Medicare for All system. So, the current system, you as a human being need health care for when you are sick. So you get health insurance, and you either do that by, going out and getting it yourself and paying monthly premiums, or you sacrifice, money every paycheck because it's going towards your plan that's through your job. So that money is all going to the health insurance company. The health insurance company's main it's a company is to generate profit. How do you generate profit? You pay out less than you pay in. And their ways of doing this are, let's take money in from people every month in terms of premiums. Let's have deductibles so that we still force people to pay up to a certain amount before we start to pay. Let's do co-payments so that every single time, on top of the monthly payments that they're paying us, they also have to be paying the health care people when you go and see them. Let's do co-insurance. That this is another option, co-insurance, where you just flat out pay a percentage. Like, oh, I just have to pay for 10% of my shit, no matter what the cost of it is. And health insurance limits, where they will be like, hey, we only cover up to $100,000 and everything after that's on you. And I think the reason why this system is criticized a lot by people on the left is because it kind of just involves a lot of stress. Like, you are not ever really sure about your health. It's never like just completely guaranteed. It's always on the back of your mind. Uh so yeah, so the Medicare for All system, you need health care when you get sick. You get health care by paying taxes. And the idea behind why Medicare for All or a single payer system is better than the current system, and why every other developed country has a single payer system of some kind is because the amount that the average person that you would be paying in taxes that would be going towards your healthcare, it would be less in taxes, the amount you're paying in taxes for your healthcare, your health insurance, like your government health insurance, like you just go to the hospital and you're covered. The amount you're paying in taxes for that is less than you would be paying in the current system. How are you saving money and having full coverage? Again, under the single payer system, everything is covered and you're paying less per month for the full coverage. How is that possible? Because you don't have a business in between your money and the health, insurance. Like you don't have the health insurance companies coming in between that process and taking money off the top. Your money's going straight to the government. The government is giving the money to the hospitals because you pay your taxes. You just cut out the profit middleman people. So that's the idea behind that. And then you also would be eliminating medical debt because everyone would be covered. So, you wouldn't be having crazy outstanding debt. And so now we get into why the establishment and corporate politicians don't want Medicare for all. They do not want Medicare for all because the health insurance companies want to exist to continue to make profit and pay themselves good amounts of money off of profiting off people's health and skimming money off of the top of that process. And in order to remain in a society where they can exist, you need to convince people to not make it so that your line of work does not exist anymore. So you kind of just do that by donating to politicians so that, if it ever came up for a single payer system, you make all the same arguments. Oh, what about the waiting lines? Does having to wait slightly longer outweigh the benefits of everyone having full coverage for paying less? So you pay off, you donate money to politicians to influence how they would vote, and then you run health insurance ads on mainstream media channels. So then, implicitly, you're not going to have news reporters bashing on the health insurance industry when health insurance industries are paying your salary. So here, I wanted to do some catharsis stuff. This is for all of the people who are angry at the progressives for not fighting enough. I came up with the best apology message I could come up with if I were them. If I had fucked up and not had done force the vote, this is what I'd be saying right now. I'd be saying, hello, my name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Barbara Lee, Joy Garcia, Corey Bush, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Jamie Raskin, Katie Porter, Mary Newman, Mark Pocan, Pramila Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, Raul Grishalva, and Rokana. And you know what? I did a mother effing oopsie. I should have leveraged my vote for Nancy Pelosi for a fuller vote on Medicare for all during a pandemic. I mean, just saying that out loud, it's like, duh. I'm sorry. I haven't been fighting as hard as everyone out there wants me to be on every issue. Perhaps you can never fight hard enough to quench the immediate suffering of others. While I may not always fight perfectly, I promise to fight more. We are on the same team. Thank you for coaching. My name is all the people, and I approve this message. Okay. So just some carryover interesting things that I was thinking about was that when, the March for Medicare for All was happening, I went to that in DC, and I'm like an idiot. Like I didn't, I've heard of Corey Bush, but I didn't really recognize that it was Corey Bush. I only really recognized Marianne Williamson there because she was like on the ticket for like that she was going to be speaking there. So at some point Marianne Williamson shows up, so I'm kind of like, oh, whoa, shit. And I had a little poster that I ended up having her sign, but at one point she was talking with Cori Bush. And in the literature for Force the Vote, it says, Marianne Williamson was a supporter for Force the Vote. So I'm curious, like, for all of the people out there who really are going after these, 14, 15 progressive politicians for not, doing Force the Vote, um, how I'm curious what Marianne Williamson, one of the people who is published on the Force to Vote website for being for Force to Vote. I wonder how her demeanor was in her conversations with Cori Bush, if she was charitable to her, if she was gracious for her for fighting in other ways, if she, really hated her guts for not doing Force the Vote. Like, and for the people out there who, do the purity-ish testing shit for, progressives and the tactics and stuff, which, I don't think it's unfair to criticize their tactics and stuff, but for the people out there who, relentlessly go after these people for little things, sometimes, you know, perceivable, everything again is in the eye of the beholder. But for the people who go after the people for these things, are you then to then go after Marianne Williamson for, why aren't you hounding Cori Bush when you have her face to face, when you're, on the literature for Force the Vote? Like, aren't you supposed to be more of an advocate to push against these people instead of having a friendly conversation? I'm curious about that. Yeah. And in conclusion, I want to win. I just want to win so that we can do the good stuff. And I want to do good stuff for, things that are not affiliated with me or my political shit, like third parties and, their quest to become a viable thing. From my understanding, other kind of political systems, ranked choice voting, etc., are more viable towards that and could be end up being more democratic. And if that's the route that leads to them having more success and more viewpoints being able to be opened and, having political power in that sense, I want that. I'm fighting for that through the Democratic Party because that's my view on how we can get in a position to do it. So, and maybe, I change on my political stuff every day. So, not crazy drastically. And, it is usually drifting in one direction, but, it is like, we're all human beings and we're all, fluid in a sense, especially with politics, because it's ever changing. So, you know, let's try and, yes, I want to win. In order to win, we need votes. How can we effectively get people to want to align with us, to vote with us? And what is not effective? Is how you approach politics effective at having constructive dialogue? And are you able to have conversations without completely persuading people or without potentially persuading people at all without blowing a gasket? Because at the end of the day, it's only a thing that, affects us every couple of years, for a couple minutes or, a couple hours. Every couple of years, you get in line and you do your voting, and that's what it comes down to. So we have to put this shit into perspective. And but the people who are criticizing that, we only have so much time to work on some of this shit. So, you have to understand both sides. So I'd be curious to see how these progressive politicians, if in like a little bit from now, they'll have hindsight and they'll really look back and be like, what the heck were we thinking when we weren't doing this and this and this? And if that comes down to them just being inexperienced. So politics.